Our top story this hour, there has been a violent face-off at the India-China border on Monday after a violent standoff between the troops of western sector of India-China border. India has said that China departed from the consensus to respect the line of actual control in the Galwan Valley. Both sides suffered casualties that could have been avoided, says India. Now, the Indian Army has confirmed that a violent face-off has taken place along the line of actual control at midnight on Monday. 3 Indian Army men lost their lives in the ensuing face-off at the Galwan Valley in Ladakh. The casualties included 1 senior officer and 2 soldiers. Now, according to the Indian Army, China also suffered casualties during the escalation. Now, we are being joined by our principal diplomatic correspondent, Siddhant Sibbal, live for more on this story. Good evening to you, Siddhant. What are the latest details that you have for us on this story?
Well, Alison, a short while ago, India's External Affairs Ministry issued a strong statement saying that China unilaterally tried to change the situation on the ground at the LAC despite the agreement between both the Indian side and the Chinese side. The Indian side, in a strong statement, detailed what happened overnight when the face-off happened, in which the Indian Army has confirmed that it lost 3 of its personnel. The Indian side also said it's committed to sovereignty and called for dialogue so that the situation does not deteriorate. This is an important point given the fact that India has called for dialogue amidst the growing escalation of the border dispute between India and China. But by and large, if we look at the day's development, since morning we have seen how there have been rounds of conversations happening here in Delhi. And of course, it was at around 12 noon here Indian Standard Time that the Indian Army first confirmed that the development has happened and said that there were casualties both sides. In fact, both the Indian Army and the MEA has confirmed that there are casualties both sides. Even the Chinese are confirming that there are casualties, but the Chinese are not giving any details on the number of casualties, even though the Indian side has confirmed that 3 of its personnel have been martyred in this face-off between both the countries, which have happened after years, because it's after years that something of this sort has happened when it comes to India-China relationship or at the LAC, despite the Wuhan guidance given by both the leaders after Doklam crisis, the famous Wuhan informal summit, and of course the Chennai Connect summit, which happened last year, in which both the leaders gave guidance to their soldiers, to their armies, that when it comes to the LAC, given the fact that there are different perception of the LAC, if there is a situation, both sides can sit at local level and converse. But despite the strategic guidance given by both the leaders, this development has happened, and this does not bode well amidst the COVID crisis that has been the major crisis across the world.
Right, Siddhant. And what do we make of China? We don't have the latest update. They have been refusing casualties on their side, despite the statement that's been released by the Indian ministry.
Well, yes, Alison, it has been a pretty long day and reactions coming from both sides. The Chinese side, of course, we know that through its mouthpiece, Global Times has confirmed that there are casualties. In fact, the army chief, the Chinese army has also confirmed that there are casualties, but they haven't confirmed the numbers. But if we look at the statements coming from China, they haven't been very, very positive. They have been very combative. We know China has been largely combative when it comes to the current situation, not only with the Indians, but also with Vietnamese, with the Japanese, and also the Vietnamese. In fact, the Taiwanese today confirmed that the Chinese fighter planes crossed into their airspace. They were, of course, driven back, but one can see there is an increased belligerence by the Chinese amidst the COVID crisis, and it seems that the Chinese President Xi Jinping, in an attempt to douse the criticism he is facing inside the country over handling of the COVID crisis, is trying to divert the attention with these sorts of events, incidences, and of course this major flare-up between the Indian side and the Chinese side, which the Indian side has not only confirmed, but given out the details saying that how the Chinese side has been trying to change the situation on the ground, the status quo on the ground unilaterally. But that has been something that comes very naturally to the Chinese. We have seen after how India removed a special status for the erstwhile state of Jammu and Kashmir, there were strong statements by Chinese. In fact, the Chinese saying that they are part of the so-called Kashmir dispute. In fact, it was the Chinese who led the diplomatic onslaught at the United Nations Security Council. Of course, India thwarted it, but largely it has been China-driven policies in the region, trying to be aggressive in the region, especially when it comes to India, and of course increasing its influence in South Asia.
Right, Siddhant. And as you said, this has been many years where there's been no issue of this kind, and this violent face-off has taken place after there was a de-escalation after the massive build-up.
Well, yes, Alison, last week we know that there was confirmation by sources here in Delhi that there has been de-escalation at various points, but few points remain, including the Galwan Valley, where the incident has happened, where the Indian side has lost the army personnel, and of course the Chinese side has also lost their army personnel. There is, of course, no confirmation on the numbers, but if you look at how China has been acting, it has been a combative China, and it looks like that the Wuhan spirit that emerged after the famous informal Wuhan summit between the Indian side and the Chinese side has clearly finished. And of course, we know that in few days' time, the RIC summit is going to take place. The RIC Foreign Minister Summit through video conference is going to take place on 22nd of June. That is approximately 1 week from now. The big question is, will India's Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar participate in that video conference? Also, we know that the Indian Foreign Minister talked about this face-off between the Indian side and the Chinese side to the Indian Prime Minister. Of course, this was a pre-scheduled meeting, but this is expected to be discussed. We also know that the Indian Defence Minister has already briefed. There are statements, but by and large, situation remains tense, and the big question is how both sides are going to sort out the situation on the ground, because now it seems it's out of the hands when it comes to the local mechanism that was devised by both sides. It's up to the political leadership, the Indian leadership and the Chinese leadership to intervene and solve the situation. So far, it seems the situation is going in a negative terrain unless there is a direct contact between the political leadership of both the countries. So far, there hasn't been any political intervention. In fact, there hasn't been any statement by the Chinese president or by the Indian Prime Minister. But so far, both sides are now focusing on dialogue, as we have heard from the statement by the Indian External Affairs Ministry.
Right. And Siddhant, we believe that China's Vice Foreign Minister and India's ambassador are scheduled to meet soon. What can we expect from this meeting?
Well, it looks like that meeting has happened. Well, it is being right now termed as a meeting, but usually in the current circumstances, it's called summoning. We do not know whether the Chinese envoy here is summoned or not, but we already know that how the Chinese were reacting since morning. In fact, the Chinese Foreign Ministry in a statement in their daily press briefing said that they have made a strong protest with the Indian side regarding the developments at the LAC. But rest assured, the Indian side is also going to react strongly. We do expect more statements coming soon. In fact, the Indian Army is expected to give out a detailed statement very soon. This will be the second statement by the Indian Army, and do expect the number of the Indian soldiers who have died in this face-off to rise also, because we are getting confirmation now that the numbers could be above the 3 number which has been given by the Indian Army at around 1 p.m. Indian Standard Time today. But by and large, this is a major escalation coming after more than 40 years, and this is going to majorly impact relationship between New Delhi and Beijing. Both the sides were trying to engage, trying to make sure that their differences do not become dispute. This is a line which has been often quoted by both the leaders, by both the foreign ministries, but it seems that this spirit is going away with each passing hour, especially the grim atmosphere here in Delhi, with rounds of meetings happening, briefing happening with the Defence Ministry or with the Prime Minister, and do expect more to the story as the days and the hours pass.
Siddhant, thank you very much for that update. That's our principal diplomatic correspondent, Siddhant Civil, bringing us the latest today. And now, this is what a Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson had to say earlier.
近来为缓和 Recently, in order to ease the situation in the border areas between China and India maintained close communication through diplomatic and military channels. On June 6, the border troops of two countries held a commander-level military meeting and reached an important consensus on easing the situation in the border areas. But what is shocking is that on June 15th, the Indian troops seriously violated the consensus of the two sides. They crossed the border illegally twice and carried out provocative attacks on Chinese personnel, resulting in serious physical conflicts between the two border forces. China has lodged strong protests and solemn complaints with the Indian side, and once again solemnly demands that the Indian side strictly restrain the frontline troops in accordance with the relevant spirit. Do not cross the border, do not act provocatively, do not take any unilateral actions that will complicate the border situation. China and India agree to continue to resolve bilateral issues through dialogue and consultation and make efforts to ease the tension and maintain peace and tranquility in the border areas.